This is Ether Dynamics, back again to talk about artificial intelligence and presenting new material using the platform of Skyrim The Elder Scrolls V. Once again, I want to take a moment to thank the other contributors that have helped make this video possible. Links to their content and homepages can be found below. This new mod is focused on the ways AI actors interact with each other as well as the player and builds on points made in previous videos. So, though I'm using Skyrim as a presentation engine, these points extend to many other titles. And now, on with the show. Despite the gorgeous graphics, complex storylines, and character customization options in modern games, many RPGs have enemies standing around just waiting to fight and die, with very few other activities. Some might call this a problem with immersion, but I think the issue runs a bit deeper, and the solution can bring about a fresh new feel to gaming environments. For example, players that are familiar with the Elder Scrolls series know there's a big difference between friendly and enemy NPCs. The former are usually coded with sophisticated daily routines and activities. But while some foes have patrol patterns, most dungeon lurkers seem to be just hanging out. This includes various bandits, random mage covens, and other actors who should need food, water, and some kind of other activity to keep going. Enemies like the Dwarven Mecha and Undead are okay to have lying dormant, but running across them time and time again can get a little repetitive. It's also a great immersion breaker when you see players farming creatures that just magically respawn for no canonical reason. Now here we see some parallels to Dark Souls. It's great to see a new franchise with such a strong following. While the challenges of Dark Souls opponents varies greatly, there are a few common threads and observations. Many common enemies have only a few moves and are basically high-risk fodder. Like the Elder Scrolls series, a lot of enemies seem to be waiting around just to get killed, especially bosses. While that might line up with the plot of the world being filled with mindless undead, it presents a very empty game mechanic. Even these all-powerful demon/monster things seem to do nothing but wait for someone to invade their home and eventually kill them. With emphasis on eventually. If left undisturbed, they serve no other purpose in the game universe. Now, some folks argue about the difficulty, and it's true, the franchise brags that it has a punishing learning curve. Seriously, read through the website. And that's great! I'm glad players enjoy that setup. It means they found a sweet spot of difficulty that people want. However, that's still a relative difficulty setting that some people like. Imagine instead if every time you died, the game made you start over from scratch. Now, some players might call that a true hardcore experience, but the truth is the preferences for difficulty are all relative. We can see similar dilemmas in both Devil May Cry and God of War. Like other games, both have the enemies waiting around / only summoned when the player approaches phenomenon going on. Now, I love the God of War franchise for its gorgeous visual design, fluid controls, and Twitch gameplay. However, when you have foes that have a very limited spread of attack behaviors and very obvious telegraphs and triggers, then the only variety you can expect is when designers put different combinations of them together. Otherwise, fighting that type of opponent one-on-one can actually get boring once you figure out how to defeat them. Now, for both titles, boss fights are epic. But most other encounters are forgettable. No one reminisces about the 10 skeletons they killed in whatever stage, because they were just like the other hundreds of skeletons they had to kill to level up to that point, and will be like all the skeletons they kill after that point. Now, if that's true, why put all that empty filler into a game? Why put in stuff that the player doesn't even want to fondly remember? Alright, I've spent enough time talking about what's missing. How about demonstrating what can be there instead? If you pop into Markarth, you'll notice a little something's going on. 2 new units have been introduced, each with differing abilities and tactics. These are meant to be more robust than other opponents, less like dominoes that have been set up for you to knock over, and more like rivals who have their own objectives and want to survive as long as possible in pursuit of those goals. Both groups share a handful of common behaviors. The first among these is the use of potions. Like a human player, each will possess a leveled stock of potions, and these will be used as each appropriate stat gets low. Secondly, each group will seek to loot the bodies of their fallen comrades. There's no sense in letting a good stockpile of potions or equipment go to waste, especially if their opponents can take advantage of them. Third, each group will seek to avoid the tactical disadvantages as demonstrated in the previous videos with the lightning mages. They are fully aware of trouble spots in both Markarth and Markarth Understone Keep. However, each group will react to that danger differently as described later. First, we'll look at the Forsworn unit. There are 2 spell swords, 1 cleric, and 1 hagraven mage for area of effect spells. The spell swords will try to engage with melee, but they also have distance spells to harass archers. Though the hagraven is slow on her feet, she can raise zombies, heal herself often, and cast area of effect fireballs. Now, when a member of the Forsworn team is injured, they'll seek out another Forsworn member to heal them using the buddy system as shown in the last AI demo. The cleric, shown here in the foreground, is primarily focused on hasting others, as well as being the main healing battery for the group. He's also the only one that can use dual casting and impact with destruction spells. Between the two, the Forsworn are the less disciplined unit. This means they care less about unit cohesion. Each member of the group will flee or fight independently. This is influenced by several factors, including their health and the relative tactical advantage of their opponent. This has its pros and cons. On one hand, it can help to scatter guards so they can't mount an organized defense. However, Forsworn can also get isolated and picked off if they can't reach a comrade for healing or support. Because of this, they're more likely to survive individually, but not necessarily be as effective as a group. The Frostmere unit consists of 2 clerics, 1 mage, and the leader, Lord Arngrim of Frostmere. Lord Arngrim is mainly a heavy melee opponent who wields the legendary sword Cold Death. Different power attacks will autocast various spells, though the damage is reduced to prevent it from being too overpowered. He also has limited spell abilities, such as Frost Cloak, Heal Self, and Haste Self, but he has to sheathe his sword to cast them. The clerics serve 2 functions, acting as controllers to buff allies or weaken enemies, and also as heavy armor support for Arngrim. Their debuff abilities include Slow, Weaken, and an area effect spell called Eldritch Bolt. This does no damage in and of itself, but each successive hit increases an enemy's vulnerability to frost. They can buff team members by casting Heal and Haste, and unlike the Forsworn, the clerics will actually seek out injured party members and heal them. They also have Wall of Frost and Frost Cloak for defense. Lastly, their melee abilities include Disarming Bash and Shield Charge. Coupled with the armor-penetrating power of the mace, they are formidable hand-to-hand opponents. The Frostmere Mage is mainly there for damage output. In addition to the full spread of frost-based destruction spells, he can summon Atronachs or Ice Wraiths for additional offensive power or to cover retreats. As you can see by their general behavior, the Frostmere unit is much more disciplined than the Forsworn unit. They will tend to stick together and follow the current leader, which changes if the leader dies, though individuals can still occasionally be pulled off if they perceive a grave threat. Based on the relative health of his group members and their tactical position, the leader may call for a coordinated retreat, prompting the spellcasters to deter pursuance with walls of ice, as well as a high probability of summoning an expendable creature as an extra deterrent. Because of this cohesion, they're much more likely to survive as a group, but if cornered, they're also most likely to all wipe at once. Due to the independent nature of each group, they can fluidly handle a wide variety of enemies. The heavily armored Frostmere unit will typically close for hand-to-hand, while the lighter Forsworn unit will provide ranged offense. However, each unit and each individual will react dynamically depending on tactical advantages and disadvantages, granting the ability to survive a wider variety of situations and take on a broader spectrum of enemies. Now, to truly put that to the test, I set up a few special challenges, and I encourage players to do the same. Here we have 12 Stormcloak guards, fighting all 8 invaders after they use some potions outside. The result? Invaders win 0 casualties. Next came 12 on 8 Thalmor, and despite being even lower on potions than before, the invaders win again 0 casualties. Next, I tried 8 of the stronger werewolves. This was meant as a big test of the hand-to-hand combat participants. The results? Invaders win again 0 casualties. And lastly, after all those successive fights, came 8 Master Vampires. Both sides made a big push to take the middle, but in the end, the invaders take it again, 0 casualties. So why go through all this trouble? The bottom line is, I want there to be a new standard for enemies in games. AI units don't all have to be alike. They can have varying group tactics that complement each other, or at least give the player some variety. It would be nice if enemies don't want to simply march up and die. They should have the same kind of tactics and refined roles as players commanding their own parties. They should also have their own goals. The invaders are here to take the throne room and kill anyone that gets in their way. That way, the player can opt in or out. It's not contrived around their character, but he or she can choose to inject themselves into that storyline. It also changes the world. Merchants may die, the enemy may become entrenched or weakened by the fight. Who knows? But it's not some random collection of actors waiting in some ruin for someone to come along and kill them. The end result is a more dynamic world with much deeper and more subtle features for the player to explore and enjoy. This has been another presentation by Ether Dynamics. For more info on the mod, including new spells, weapons, and magic items, keep an eye on this channel. I also look forward to feedback and general discussion. Please feel free to leave comments below. Thank you for watching.